Hello, I'm Juliette Bird. I'm Head of Counterterrorism for NATO headquarters in Brussels. I work in the Division for Emerging Security Challenges. Now, you've asked me, have definitional issues surrounding terrorism ever affected NATO? And if so, how? Well, as the UN, which followed on from attempts made by the League of Nations, as the UN proved, not having a definition of terrorism doesn't mean you can't take any action to counter it. Any definition can serve only as an internal tool if no external consensus has been reached. NATO's military defined terrorism in the 1980s, but it is, in my view, only a partial definition and has not restricted NATO's work. Counterterrorism is a huge spectrum of activities, most of them domestic. At least 95% of them are civilian, and many of them fall in the bailiwick of ministries of interior, of justice, of social welfare, and others, where NATO has no role. Only ministers of defence and foreign affairs meet at NATO. When allies first started to elaborate the counterterrorism policy guidelines for NATO in 2011, the definition of terrorism did not play a role. There seemed to be tacit agreement that you know terrorism when you see it, and that its motivations are many and varied. The Allies were united in insisting that NATO's place was to support the nations in their CT roles. I would say that definitions are only now becoming a hot topic at NATO, as the 2002 military concept for defence against terrorism is being reviewed in the context of the 2012 counterterrorism policy guidelines and the other current strategic documents of NATO. On a personal basis, I find that people I speak to can sometimes get so hung up on the issue of definition that they find it impossible to listen or to discuss CT developments. And I think that that blinkering effect is not useful. I want NATO to focus on constructive, practical action, on sharing allied and partner understandings of terrorist-affected situations, and on applying best practice wherever possible. I'll take this opportunity to address the question of lists of recognised terrorist groups, and that doesn't arise for NATO. We have no norm-setting or standardisation role in the field of counterterrorism, and we have no ability to set sanctions, unlike the UN or the EU, and therefore we have no need of any list.